to everybody, and our chat is on. Hello, Regina, and maybe we'll just see where everybody is from. I think we have about close to 100 people with us right now, and with about I think more than 450 signups. So it's always nice to know where everybody is from. And so we've got Regina from the Philippines. And as you can see, we have our panelists that's from the different countries, from Thailand, Indonesia, and Philippines, Singapore as well. That's where I'm from. In case you are, joining us for the very first time, you see an international group because we've got different BrainFit centers everywhere. So a warm hi, and feel free to use the chat as Naresh has said, right? But I will get on with the presentation because we have quite a bit to cover this evening in Singapore time. So we are here today to talk about, it's part of our Supercharge Your Child's Learning series, in case you're just joining us. And so we've gone through part 1 and part 2 talking about high impact learning strategies. And, 2 Thursdays ago, we were talking about, effective revision techniques. So today we're moving a little bit to, before you can even revise, right, content and knowledge, right? How does it even get in first? You got to comprehend, right? And you got to analyze. So all that thinking processes that we call cognitive skills or intelligence. Okay, and again, if you are new to BrainFit, just allow me to do a very quick introduction. Before we get into the topic proper. And hello, we see Shumita, hello from Singapore. That's great. Okay, my name is Cheryl. I am the founder of BrainFit. I'm actually trained as a pediatric physiotherapist. So I've, worked with the brain for a very, very long period of time now. Starting my career, in the local children's hospital here after my education in Australia. So I'm a mother as well. And today we're talking about intelligence. We're talking about, can we truly impact capabilities, right? And, having worked with the brain for so long, and also as a mom, who has got 2 brains, I've got 2 daughters, that I have nurtured, I would say it's a definite yes. Right. But is the process easy? Not necessarily. And we're going to talk about the process, today, and hopefully, impress upon you to adopt a brain-friendly kind of lifestyle where then change can be easier. Because the way we're understanding our brain now is like, it's more like your heart, right? So you can have your heart become stronger. You can prevent heart disease. But what do you need to do? You need to exercise, right? Moderate activity, X number of minutes a week to get the heart to change. So we know our brain as an organ of change, quite similar to our heart nowadays. So this is BrainFit and our team, supporting the questions in case you have questions. So I've got all my partners in the different countries. And so we work by delivering brain fitness training programs, either through learning centers or with schools. So we also work with a number of partner schools in these different countries. So here you can see we run enrichment programs depending on the locality for babies as young as 9 months up to older individuals. We also run a preschool in some location, including the one in Singapore. Here you can see some of our centers and our kids in action. These are some of the awards we have won along the way, and some of our partners in the field of brain science. I won't go into that because we need to talk about boosting cognitive skills and intelligence. Okay, so I have kind of divided my content into 2 main parts. It's a very big topic and we don't have a lot of time. And I want to make sure, we have some time for questions as well. So my first question, my first point, right, it's really clarifying what are cognitive skills. So there are many terms for that. People call it brain fitness. We do. I like that term because with fitness, it kinds of show that you can change it, right? Rather than, when you talk about brain, cognition, or even intelligence, people have the impression that it's a fixed trait in us, right? So, but now we know that, again, the brain is like an organ of change. It's an organ of use. Not easy, like the heart, right? But certainly it can be shaped, through positive experiences. So I want to talk about that, just clarifying some of the concepts before we go into discussing strategies to boost cognitive skills and intelligence. So let's start with this. So my first question is, And hopefully we get some participation from the audience. Yeah. Are cognitive skills and intelligence the same? So that's my first question. I'm not using a poll today. Usually I use a poll, right? But if we just, it's just a yes, no answer. Okay. So if you can, share your response, I think just have a sense of, and again, there's no right and wrong, right? It's just getting everybody warm up. So it's different. Thank you, Patricia. Not sure. Yeah, Hamida. Not sure. No. Kate, thanks. No, no. So I'm seeing a lot more no's. Yeah. No still. Anybody? Yes. Here we go. Not sure. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. It's always very nice to hear from the audience in a setting like that. Great. Okay. Thank you for your participation. So the vast majority of the audience says no. Yeah. And maybe, right, Nabila? But maybe skills is more technical and application. Yeah. It's a very complex topic. And if you Google, you actually, sometimes it can get a bit confusing and people use the terms interchangeably. So I'm just going to make an attempt. They are complex concepts, but the answer is no, but very closely related. And perhaps like Nabila said, right, maybe one is more about skills and one is more about application, right? So I think that's one way to look at it. So they're very intertwined. Now, I want to talk about it from the psychologist's point of view, right? So I'm coming in from different perspective, right? So the psychologists will define intelligence as three main things. And this is something I just take from the net. And depending, right, different people have different interpretation. I think this is pretty good. Right. Number one, the ability to learn, right? Your learning capabilities, whether you're a good learner or I teach you and then you don't learn, so you're not very bright, right? And not only just that, but you need to be able to recognize and also solve problems. To me personally, at a very layman's level, I always think intelligence is solving problems. You're bright means that, I give you something that's hard, you solve it for me, right? That's great. All right. So I think certainly the problem solving understanding, right, or that concept, right, but together with the ability to learn. So these are the two big areas. Now, if you have an IQ test, right, or you go deeper into it, you'll find that there is two main areas of intelligence that we talk about. One is fluid intelligence and one is crystallized intelligence. This is a little bit more of what you are learning along the way. So one easy way to understand the difference is that this is really problem solving. The way I personally, like what I say is about the ability to solve problems. That's your fluid intelligence, right? Whereas, and we know with age, for example, just one simple way to remember. With age, our fluid intelligence tend to fall faster, but our crystallized intelligence, in fact, stays, or in fact, it can grow. This is more the knowledge that we learn from reading, from going to school, from your, even you could be retired, but if you are reading, fervently, you could continue to acquire knowledge, right? So that's why when you see an IQ test, right, there's different components. One is like reasoning, where they see whether you can identify patterns and then solve problems. So if A, B, C was this, what is D, right? You've got to be able to see the relationship, for example. Whereas for crystallized intelligence, it's your vocabulary, words that you have acquired, the meaning of them, and also your general knowledge, right? So from reading, are you able to amass your knowledge base? Yeah. So that's how we will see it from the psychologist's perspective. Now, from the neuroscientist perspective, so that's where I am a lot more comfortable in, right? We look at, the parts of the brain. So we always go to what parts of the brain, okay? So yes, problem solving, but I want to know how to impact. If the brain was like a muscle, and that's more and more how we understand it, I want to know which muscle. So that's the curiosity of the people in my field, because we want to learn about how then can we have a positive impact? What do we need to change, right, for a child to be able to solve problems better? So this is from a lab that has been studying human intelligence for a very long time. I think it's in the U of Michigan, Professor Aaron Babe. So he published this. This is about 10-year-old now, And so this is me just almost copying and pasting from the research. Intelligence, as from the brain scan, has been found to depend on the brain's ability to integrate information from different areas. So you've got your verbal areas, your crystallized intelligence, your visual, your visual parts of the brain. Again, to solve problems, you need to be able to see the patterns, right? Spatial is a lot more linked to movement. Now, visual, spatial work very closely, right? The body and our visual system are best friends, okay, siblings. So they work very, very closely. These are big math areas as well. So if you want to impact math, you can use movement to impact math. Then finally, executive functions, right? So that's your paying attention and all that. So you start to see from the neuroscientist perspective, the link now into cognitive skills, okay? And that's by scanning the brain. And yet again, if you look at it from an educational, educator's perspective, and we have a lot of educators, in our midst, I do believe, yeah. And we are familiar with the Bloom's taxonomy of thinking skills, and I think it's very aligned with intellectual or intelligence, right? Intellectual processing, because as part of your critical thinking, you're meant to solve problems, okay? Create a new solution at the creating phase, or even applying knowledge to solve new problems. So you critically think, not in a vacuum. You're trying to solve complex problems in the world. We're trying to find a cure for cancer. We need creative thinkers, critical thinkers to find the cure for cancer, right? So from the educational perspective, we then look at what are the different skills we need to teach a child. That's why we have, the taxonomy that guides educators. So I'm going to use this to start linking into cognitive skills, right? So depending on, again, which perspective you're coming from, but at the brain level, I think more and more, we really understand them as interrelated very, very closely, however, quite different. And I'm going to use this chart, right? So if we use the critical thinking skills pyramid, we have remembering right at the bottom. So your memory actually is a very low level thinking process. A lot of people think you're smart if you can remember a lot of things. A toddler who can recite the flags from all the countries in the world, he's bright. Actually, he just has a good memory. Intelligence is a lot more than that. It's about understanding, applying to solve problems, analyzing, evaluating, and then eventually creating new solutions, right? Apart from your current knowledge. So cognitive skills comes, I would think, a little bit below that. What do you need before you can even remember or understand? All right, we can teach, but a child may not understand, right? What are we going to do? Because these are the very low levels, that we assume that everybody has, but not everybody has. So if you look at that, what do we need? We need to pay attention, right? I mean, you need to tune into me, otherwise, this whole hour it's quite meaningless, isn't it? And what else do you need? Perception. So you tune in, then whatever that you see or you hear got to be correctly interpreted. Remember, our eyes and our ears are only receiving information, right? But we're not talking about eyesight here or, your listening, your hearing ability. Those are certainly very important, but we're talking about beyond these receptors where information is now sent to the brain through, nerve cells, right? So now the brain is trying to capture this information. So that there are brain or cognitive skills that involve. There's a set of perception skills, and then the speed of which this is happening, because we know that in the older people, individuals, for example, we often talk about, you're getting older, you lose your memory. But what we know is that because they are losing processing speed, or I'm probably in the part of the declining curve, right? When your processing speed goes down, you're unable to capture information as much. So your memory is not as robust in retaining because it's just too slow in coming in. So processing speed can affect your memory capacities. And here I'm going to put working memory, because I think where we start here, it is really long-term memory, right? What you have already attained, because that's where you are then going to understand the knowledge and then apply it, right? But you've got your thinking memory at the point of interaction with new content. Apart from perceiving, you got to now start having your working memory to link the content to your long term, all right? So it's a very active memory that is certainly very heavily studied as part of cognitive skills, okay? So these are certainly separate skills. We wouldn't necessarily think of paying attention as intelligence. There's no intelligence. I mean, it's not a complex thing, but you need to pay attention, isn't it? Otherwise, you can't even learn, to begin to learn, okay? So they are a separate set, but you can see how closely intertwined they are, all right? And so just to summarize, right, apart from the few tiers that I talked about, so, there are other things that we talk about. So if you have a child just interacting with information, paying attention, as I've mentioned, you need to perceive. And often we talk about the two main channels that information or knowledge, will be assimilated into an individual. Either you're looking at a picture, the diagram on the blackboard, or you are listening to the description by a teacher, perhaps. And not only that, your working memory, your thinking memory is actively trying to, okay, I know this or I do not know this. I'm trying to link it to old memory. That's how you form a concept, right? So your prior knowledge becomes very important because working memory tries to bridge new and current or old, yeah, and push it in. And of course, you have your motor control. We didn't talk about that, but your spatial part, spatial and your motor is the one part, the kind of at the top of the brain where you now need to write or maybe speak about it, right? But there's certainly a motor response and impulse inhibition. So that's part of attention. You have things happening around you, but you need to suppress it and still continue to tune in. All right. So that's your receiving information. So you can see they don't really qualify as, having great intelligence at this level, at least, right? Just moving your finger. What intelligence? It's not problem solving, but you need to be able to do this in order to get to problem solving, right? But cognitive skills doesn't stop there. It then also about receiving information is about processing information as well. It's about the thinking. At this point, you are now moving closer and closer to the intelligence network. All right. So you're moving up your pyramid. Okay. And so you have your working memory that continues to work as you are thinking, processing, right? But you now have your speed that really matters, all right? And so you're asking a child, and the child is really taking a long time, to answer versus a child who gets that immediately, right? So you can see the differences. Your sequencing skills, all right? This first, then that, then that. All right, your clarity with your thought, your cognitive flexibility, where if this is wrong, I'm going to apply a new strategy, right? You're not stuck where you can go from a train of thought to another one pretty fluidly, right? That's important, yeah. And then you have your pattern recognition, which is really part of intelligence or your fluid intelligence, right? Your reasoning ability. You have to first begin by seeing the pattern. Okay, so hopefully, this is kind of complex, but I've kind of helped you to make the link between these. These are words that we don't usually talk about. We talk about problem solving, right? So intelligence as a concept is a lot older. And it is because, psychologists have been around studying the study of human behavior, have been around for a very, very long time. But neuroscience, which is where we are able to look into the brain, it's quite recent because it's only in the 1990s that we had really good tools to look into a live brain. So before that, there was a lot of assumption or animal studies or looking at people who have passed on and then studying their brain, right? So that's why you're hearing about cognitive skills more and more, not because it's new, but our understanding of cognitive skills, yes, may be a lot newer, just because the tools, we didn't have the tools for a very long time. I mean, middle of 1990s. So some of the things I learned in the university at that time when I was in uni, they didn't have those tools still, right? So, but we now know a lot more and we know that it is an interlinked concept, right? And there's all these different skills that are different. However, they're all very important and they all support eventually the problem solving trait that we want. Okay? So I hope that that makes sense for all of us, right? And now I want to move on to strategies so that, so we can keep that theoretical part, slightly apart. But to look at, okay, fine. So if we accept that all these abstract terms, right? I mean, memory is memory. Like, why must we have working memory? It just makes the thing more confusing. In the past, we had short term and long term, and that was easy to understand, right? You should remember for a very short time, or you remember for a very long time. It's in your permanent storage. But now we have working memory. But that is important. I can see that we have a question that's come in, Cheryl, as well, right? On a working memory, yeah. So I will be talking a little bit about that. And so just stay with me. So if you are looking at strategies to boost cognitive skills and intelligence, right? My biggest the takeaway, I think, right, from what we know is going back to my original example of your cardiac fitness, right? So we probably for a long time didn't know that we can exercise the heart, such that it can, it can help us prevent heart disease, right? We probably thought that maybe your genes give you a strong heart or a weak heart, or you have family history of heart disease. That's it, right? So obviously medicine evolved, and we realized that through exercise, and again, the recommendation has become sharper and sharper now. We know how many minutes we need to exert moderate exercises, and then the heart architecture, meaning that the actual muscles, the cardiac muscles will change, so the architecture, the efficiency of your pumping will improve such that it can keep you away from heart disease. All right. So likewise, we are beginning to understand this brain, so once upon a time, we thought that whatever we have is what we're born with, right? If you can't do math, just too bad, right? You don't have the math genes. So we kind of think of the brain as kind of a fixed organ or a fixed character trait, right? So, but now we realize that, a lot of these things that we think was fixed, it's actually changeable, right? Not easy, just like the heart. We're not talking about a summer camp. I mean, obviously it can transform people's lives, in major way, depending on the stage of life you're at, depending on what you're trying to change, depending on what you need at that point, right? But the actual changing in architecture is not something that is a quick thing. It is biological. Our body doesn't, like become fitter very, very quickly or become weaker very quickly, right? It changes with time. All right. So brain training, and I want to talk about some principles and guidelines, right? So that we can have an overview of what are the guiding principles. I think that's important when we talk about strategies. So brain training is like physical training, okay? So one of the points is that training is program specific, muscle specific, okay? So it depends on whether you're trying to train the abs, right? So by running on the treadmill, can I have stronger biceps? No, I can't, right? I need to, I want to target another muscle, right? My biceps. I need to lift weights for my biceps. By doing crunches, I can improve my abdominals. It doesn't improve my biceps either. So we now know that the brain is very, very similar. In order to improve a certain skill, you got to target that skill. All right, because we often have discussions where, how about just Sudoku? How about just play chess? How about playing the piano? Isn't playing the piano a brain activity? As if it was, there's just a brain activity, right? So it's not like that. It depends on what you are trying to work on. Working memory, for example, then you need to target the working memory networks, right? Is it visual working memory? Is it auditory working memory? Okay, that's different, right? I mean, because the working memory, you're interacting with visual information as well as auditory information. That's when giving a prescription like, let's just run on the treadmill X number of minutes becomes a bit harder, right? Because of the complexity, right? And also the interconnections among the different areas. So the brain is a bit more complex in the sense that not only do I have to train the biceps, but the biceps is talking to the abdominals, which doesn't happen in the physical realm, right? But in the brain, it is part of the talking, right? So apart from looking at the individual cognitive skills, we also need to work at the interchangeability. I mean, the speaking, right? The handshakes among the different brain cells, right? Like, for example, if we talk about working memory, your working memory can't work very well if attention is not good, right? So then now you are, by giving, by saying that, okay, just do this for working memory, you might not see the change that you want, because working memory could also be associated with an attention weakness, sort of. Okay, so but I want to try and clarify, and as much as we can, give you some concrete ways that can be applicable. But it is hard, right? I mean, I know what can help the audience. I'm a mother, right? If you just tell me what to do, A, B, C, but this is hard. I'm trying, when I was doing up the slides, right? But let's see. Okay, let's try. Now, training is muscle specific. I have an activity here, also a brain training activity. Let's do this activity together. Okay, so what do we have to do? I can't see you, but wherever you are, can I get you to call out? And we try and do it together. I'll do it with a rhythm, okay? Let's go red down, yellow right, blue up, blue down, green left, okay? So, let's do all do that together, okay? With my time, and we just go, and then there's only 3 rows, okay? Ready? Get set, and go. Red down, yellow right, blue up, blue down, green left, blue right, yellow down. Oh, I can't see it, so sorry, it's blocked. But we can stop there. Okay, so okay, that's level 1, for example. All right. Now I want you to do a level 2 for me. Okay. Now I want to challenge, your brain a little bit more. I want you to now say red up instead. So just go opposite for me, okay? And I'm going to maintain the same rhythm and have all of us experience that, because that exercise was probably quite easy, okay? So let's get ready and go, okay? So red up, yellow left, blue down, blue up, green right, blue left, yellow up, red right, blue left, blue right, red up, red left, green down. Good job. Okay, good job, Cheryl. All right, so I can still work my, on my brain and focus. Okay, now my question to you is, let me get back to the slide. Which cognitive skills did we exercise? Okay, as I'm linking to my earlier point on it's muscle specific. Okay, so can I have participation from all of you? What do you think was working for you as you did that little visual? Thank you, Hamida. Very good. Obviously, you've got to process, and not only just the direction, right? If it's got to come in an opposite. Thank you, Patricia. Yes, visual. Any other thing? Any other thoughts? Right? What else did you have to do? Perceptual? Old knowledge? Okay, I suppose you need your color knowledge, you need your direction knowledge. Okay, a child, okay, if I give this to a 3-year-old who doesn't know left, right, he or she can't do it. Okay, so this is then maybe not so relevant. I mean, it's just not appropriate. They don't know their left. So yes, you're right. You need to perceive visually. You need to have the knowledge base, at least of your directions and your up and down. That's knowledge. Working memory. So this is working memory, yes, but it will not be heavy because it is not hard. Okay, so it's a direction opposite, but Geraldine, you're absolutely right. A young child, let's say I am just 5, okay? I'm just learning about my left side, right side, having clarity with my midline and all that, okay? Of my body sense, right? And projecting it into left and the right. And for that child, the working memory demand will be a lot higher, okay? Than someone like you or I, because we already know our directions very well. So it's not as if we have to, Pooh, is that right or left? How do I do an opposite? For a young child, yes. Working memory will be very heavy. For all of us, I think it's lightweight there, right? I'm helping to use this to clarify, right? What really, a simple activity, but so many skills can be worked on. Auditory, yeah, because why? You're going to call out the sound, right? So if you think about somebody with language challenge, right? Even having problems with associating colors and directions, for example, that could be an auditory system needs to be used when you are dealing with language. And obviously, I gave you a rhythm just now, so you had to listen with me as well. Okay, so great. Visual spatial working memory. Yeah, pay attention. Thank you. I was waiting for that. I had to pay attention a lot, because I'm trying to think, okay, what am I going to do? All right. So, and I had to kind of put my webinar aside. I'm just going to focus on this so that I can feel that my concentration, very good. Thanks, Jiri. Concentration, especially when you had to do the opposite, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. You have to process. Very good. Xiao Hui, your processing speed. Why? Because I gave you a rhythm. Right? So for some of you, if you can't follow, you might be out of rhythm, right? Self-regulation, yes. Discipline, yes, because there might be your kids running behind you. Okay, so following directions, absolutely. Thank you. You are all on the right track when we're thinking about cognitive skills. Okay, but can I let you know there's one thing you miss out? So if you look at, this is very similar to the Stroop test. You know how they give you the blue color, the word blue, but it's actually in red, and then they ask you to read, the word that is blue but actually is in red. It's confusing. So it's a bit similar because I'm showing you an arrow that's left, but I'm asking you to say an arrow that's right. So it's actually huge for, I think self-control is close to that, but your cognitive flexibility and inhibition. These are the cognitive skills terms that we will use. So it's a big inhibition activity where you have to inhibit what you want to say down, but actually is up, right? Or you want to in that Stroop example, say blue, but actually you have to say red because it is color coded red. So an activity like that, we use this in our brain training. Okay, so this is something that I just took out. But you are right. There's so many small pieces. So when we think about cognitive skills, we are thinking of these little words that you are putting in. Self-control, right? We call it inhibition. It's the same. Can you regulate and focus such that you can do what you're asked to do? Can you do it at the processing speed? Can you be flexible, right? I shifted from just following the directions to opposite. Can you change very quickly, right? So attention and focus, etc., etc. All right, but that's great. I think this is a great activity. I like it. I hope it's helping you get some ideas, right? Sequencing, yes, as well. Getting in the right order. Very, very nice. Okay, so we've got sequencing in there as well. So that is one principle. So when you are looking at activity, if you can learn to look like that, right, at an activity and think, okay, what am I able to train there with that activity? Then you are able to then apply to what you think your child might be lacking. Okay, so that's why I think that giving some principles, guidelines, rather than saying, okay, just do this activity, because it's not doing justice, because activities can be targeting a few things, right? But I will give that activity. The other thing is really eye tracking, right? So we use that for eye tracking, which is your sequencing. You got to go in order. We will use that for spatial, definitely as a spatial intervention, right? For cognitive flexibility and response inhibition. Kids who struggle with that is really some of the key areas that we're looking at if we prescribe an activity like that. Right, now let's move to strategies, okay? So here I have three main parts I want to talk about. Holistic training of various skills from 0 to 6, right? We've been talking about the older groups of children with exam, retention and all that. So let's talk about cognitive skills a little bit for them, because this is a very, very relevant age. I want to talk about targeting training to learning needs. And another guideline, which is that you need to level up exercises over time. It's not just me saying, okay, give me the worksheet, give you this arrow sheet, I'm just going to practice every day. No, with cognitive training, right? If you are trying to push up the networks and form new connection, you need to keep making the activity harder, such that that connection can become more and more robust, and the superhighway, becomes stronger and stronger. But let's look at each one of them. Now, holistic training of various skills, right? Now, this is something from Center of the Developing Child from Harvard University that talks about the age and how change in the brain relates to our age. And you can see that we always talk about the first 6 years having an exponential opportunity to change. And this is very real. This is really, experts like that telling us, right? So, and look at Harvard, what they did was the amount of effort is inversely related, right? So you change very, very easily. You take the least effort. So for us, like we have to run on the treadmill X number of minutes as an older person. For the brain, you also need to invest your minutes, right? But for a younger child, you don't need to do as much, but you get a lot more change. In fact, this is me cutting and pasting from that page. Yeah, it's easier and less costly to form strong brain circuits during the early years than it is to intervene or fix them later. But obviously, some of us, our kids are already grown, right? And we only learn about the brain now. What can we do? Can we still have hope? Absolutely. Yes, it takes more effort, but it is, I think, an investment we want to consider, because the brain controls everything about us, right? Not only just thoughts, but emotions, regulation of emotions as well, right? Our focus, our discipline. So it extends to a lot of facets of life. Okay. So this is something that I think we know that if we have a young child, great, then let's capitalize on this. If we are older, do we give up? No, we just know that we have to put in more effort, right? This is really, I think, the right attitude than saying that, okay, too bad, I'm past that the age, and I'm just not going to do it. Right? I think we have no excuse, none of us, not to have adopt brain friendly cultures. Now, this is a little one. I'm just going to show you, for example, how we will work on sequencing skills. Right? This is just one example, and I was seeing, what shots I have.
Mommy, break an egg. Let's put it here. Egg. Put it over here. Mommy, fry the egg. Very hot. Mommy, put the egg on the plate. Can I borrow your hand? Mommy, crack the egg into the pan. Mommy fries the egg. And Mommy eats the egg. Yes. Now I'm going to ask you. Mommy, crack the egg. Which one? That's right. Put it here. Crack the egg. Mommy, fry the egg. Fry the egg. Put it over the second box. Fry. Mommy, eat the egg.
That's so nice to see. Right. So this is a little story sequencing. So sequencing can be of patterns, but it could be of stories too. So you can see she's very young. She's just 18 months. So we're using it as, language work as well, right? Frying, okay, cracking and eating, okay? And so you can see that, you can start with very simple. That's why I love reading. I always encourage parents with young children to read a book every single day. Books are great. There's an order, right? But it need not be that. It could also be patterns, right? But certainly if you are looking at, training different skills, so we encourage that, you want to look at different skills. So not just focusing on sequencing. I'm not saying that sequencing is more important than anything else. I'm just giving you one example of, the different aspects. But that list that we talked about earlier, in terms of memory or focus, and I have a little table later to give you some guidelines on each one of them. But you can think about each one of them, and in your daily play with them, help the children to build these skills from young, right? So this is when, if you get some of these skills in early, then you find that, it's just great because, if you want to put in later a child that you may not be very good with order, and order is very important for your spelling, for your equations in math, for crafting an essay with a good introduction and body and conclusion, is everywhere, right? Your ordering skills, even in movement and sports, right? So the sense of order, we begin with routines at home, for example, and then doing stories or being very explicit in training, like first, second, third, like that, to actually, having the ordering skills in our life that then supports our academics, which is why I always say that when we're talking about brain training for the young ones, we're really talking about all the skills that's going to prepare them for school, right? Because sequencing is needed in your PS, in your, university essay into the university. Okay. So that's why they're so important. So that's all the time I have. But in this age, because all these skills are being laid down, so it's when you have to cast the net wide and go in and work on as many skills as you can learn about, as you can do in your daily play sessions, right? Your little short session, short play can get you a lot of change when they're very young. All right. Now let's look at the second point, target training to learning needs. Now, as a child grows, and I would say that after 6 probably, because 6 is a big milestone, beyond that, we kind of think about rewiring already, because 0 to 6 is when a lot of the brain networks are being laid down. Obviously, there's still networks that are being laid down, but the core ones would have been formed in the first 6 years, right? And then you have new networks that build on the existing one. So beyond that, we encourage a very targeted focus. Now, I'm just going to introduce you to a cognitive map assessment that we use, right? So we've used it in the Singapore MOE schools, right? This is our schools where we in this particular project, we use the assessment on 400 P1 and P2 kids so that we know their memory profile, the attention profile. We've used it in Indonesia to support, the police academy as well. So this is like a proper assessment, right? But I want to show you how we target, okay, what we mean by, right? And this is certainly through a much more technical process. In the absence of a technical process like that, you will need to use observation skills, okay? So, but this gives you an idea of how it might be, how precise it could be, right? So, for example, I'm showing you a snapshot of some of the kids' progress, okay, or achievement in that test, okay? So here we have a bunch of cognitive skills. You have your memory, working memory. They're different, yeah. Your eye tracking, spatial estimation, your auditory test items. You have your focus as well. Here you have a bunch of very technical sounding, don't worry. Then you have a bunch of bars, okay? This is just a snapshot of some students' profiles that we have taken. First of all, how do you even know this student's working memory score, right? So what we did is, for example, if I want to know if a 6-year-old is balancing well, so what would I do? I might get the child in and have him balance on one foot for as long as he can, okay? So a 6-year-old, let's say he can balance on one foot for 10 seconds. Now, is 10 seconds good? I don't know. To be honest, you don't know. You don't know until you have the data of a lot of 6-year-old children, right? So if I know that most of the 6-year-olds balances for 20 seconds, oh no, this 6-year-old is not doing very well, is it? It's only half the time. However, if the 6-year-olds on average balances for 5 seconds, this child is doing very well. He's doing double of what everybody is doing. That's why data helps us. So this is really us amassing thousands of data points of children of different ages to see what is the norm data, right? And then so that we are able to see, a child who's weak or strong. Okay, so if you're looking at needs when the child's older because of time, right? Because you're now needing more time to wire into an area. So we advocate more targeted, right? So what you can do is through a process like that, right? And so here I have another report. This is another student, but look at his bars, right? So blue and greens are great, especially high green, close to, above 110, that's great. So this child having a lot of greens and blues, high greens and nice blues, and this student having lots of reds and yellows. And what do we know, for example, of the academics? This student is these are all Singaporean students. They are in our GEP program or our gifted program when they came to us, right? Obviously, I'm only showing you a snapshot of the report, right? And certainly the parent has other concerns when they came to us. Now, this other student with all these weaknesses is actually getting all the grades at 20 to 55%. So again, you see the close link of cognitive skills that's supporting learning, right? It is supporting how information is acquired in the classroom and how knowledge is being able to be put in. So these are important skills. But certainly from here, you can start targeting kids, right? So most of our kids are not in this form, right? They will have some strengths and weaknesses. So these are more our average of what we might see for children who who do a brain profiling. So this student, for example, has this profile, and we know that the visual cluster, as I mentioned earlier, is your big math mastery cluster, whereas your auditory cluster is your language cluster. And of course, you need your focus and attention for every task, right? So these are all important. This student is doing not too badly, but certainly you can see certain, especially these areas coming down. And the child scoring about 80% in school and weakest in writing. So certainly you can correlate some of the struggles here as versus another student looking similar, but you can see the weakness is slightly different now in this cluster, and also a lot more reds now popping up in attention. So this student, the performance starts to come down, and for this child, math is actually in the failing range. All right, so some very important skills are not great, I think, and the child needs more support, and also focus is not great. So by a process like that, when you can become very precise, then you can really, let's say, go in and target some of these skills that are needed. All right. So at a very young age, we typically advocate a wide exposure where you're doing different things, right? We're not really wanting to say just build on this child's language or use music or or memory skills, just memorizing different things. These are different facets, right? And everything is important. Okay. But by the time a child is older, bearing in mind that we're going to need more time, right? And of course, there's the demands in the school, and you're trying to now close the gap, right? And depending on what grade level, then targeting the needs, right, becomes important. So that's why at BrainFit, we offer that brain fitness profiling so that you're able to identify exactly how then we can tailor and have the best brain training experience in the shortest period of time. Okay. Now, with the last bit, I want to talk a little bit about this exercise. It's not just about doing the exercises, but leveling up the exercises over time. It's really, really important. For example, I'm doing this activity. Maybe I come back to this, right? We have some experience with that. But I'm going to change, right? I'm going to also, while you are reading, right, have you use your fingers to point. For example, I'm going to say red down. Okay, I point down. Yellow, all right. Okay, this way, all right. Blue up. So I'm including motor as well. I can do that, all right, by introducing motor. But this time I make it harder, much, much harder. I want you to say the opposite direction, perhaps. I want you to say red up, but I want you to point accordingly. For example, okay? Because what we understand is not about, doing crossword puzzles, for example, right? You have to level up and challenge yourself, right? So you can't stay at the one level when you're doing a brain training activity. You always need to think about, do I make it harder or easier for the child, right? And in fact, it's very similar to lifting weights. Okay, so there's no kind of like one size fit all weights, like lifting weights for the biceps. Some of you might need 3 kilograms. Some of you might need half a kilogram, right? To some of the children who is already, who may not necessarily have weaknesses in some of these sequencing skills or spatial skills, that activity, even opposite, might be too easy, right? We might not be able to stretch them depending on where they are. So we have to push it harder. So the 80-20 rule then tells us that you have to structure the activity such that the child can do 80%, but 20% they find it hard, right? And what is that? So it becomes a bit hard when it's at the lay level, right? So for example, I say, you have to play tennis. In order to improve your tennis network, play with somebody 20% better than you. How do you evaluate? So which is why you often see brain training apps. We use the computer heavily. It's actually a very data-driven process. We are constantly looking at data. Where's your 80 for this particular activity? Once you hit it, we level up the activities, the exercises. That's why computer and software is way better than any human, changing the worksheet level and all that, right? Because we can measure how many times you get it right in X seconds, for example. So very data-driven. If you are looking at the real cognitive training process, right? At our level, where it's at the professional level. Okay, so I think at the lay level, then you want to think about your little exercises. Let's come back to the baby. I think I have a list probably coming up. So yes, we may be able to use our apps very well, computer programs, right, for the children who are older. What about the younger ones, right? How do we level up and down? You can absolutely apply the same strategies. If you have a younger one, what does leveling up and down mean? And how do you do that? You will need to then rely heavily on your observation skills. Heavily, right? So we have a baby program in Singapore, right? It's a guided play program where we're teaching parents to look out. What is your child at? And then can you level up or level down? How? I can level up and level down by increasing or decreasing my help, my hands coming in or not. I can increase or decrease the options. I can give you 2 items or maybe 3 items, all right? Or 4 choices. It becomes harder for, say, an 18-month-old, right? Or I can have very simple and then making it harder and harder, right? Not just the same puzzle, but you need to kind of stretch that ability. It's an important concept within brain training. So you can do it at the loose level, and you need great observation skills. And at the higher level, when we're depending on a more scientific process, then technology really helps us to level and find that 80-20 level for the child. So before I share, some of the guidelines, in terms of the list of games. So I want to share with you, these are real case of, kids being able to impact the cognitive skills and having a real change. She's my daughter. I'm going to use her. All right. So these are real cases because I live with them. So this was Isabel's profile when she was in K2, right? And that was when we just had the cognitive map developed, right? And you can see if just looking at, the bars here, we are estimating she's probably a 60-70%. Without any help, I'm talking about without any help. Probably very weak in math, which we already know, my husband and I, math is probably, not our area of strength versus language, relative wise. And so certainly, and I'm looking at her focus as well, and concerning. This is where Isabel is today. She's in primary 4, right? She's 10 now. She's scoring about 80-95%. No tutoring, right? Except Chinese, she goes for a Chinese enrichment. But we have so far been stayed away. But lots and lots of time invested through the years, in working and reshaping her brain, which we're at. But you can see certainly her language is way, way higher. So if you can see 80-95%, guess what is math and what is language? Yes, it's still right? That 95 is still her language. She has a natural flair, and 80%, the weakest one in my range, is the math. All right, which we have, I mean, obviously I'm happy, from where we are, but we continue to work because math is going to keep getting harder, right? And so we keep pushing up her skills so that she becomes better. So that's how, we are able to use cognitive skills to truly impact grades in the school and all. And here I just have a short video of kids, sharing their experiences. And you can see some of the exercises that we do as well.
My composition improved. My understanding improved a lot.
I have improved significantly in my memorizing, and it has helped me to memorize things better.
When I read story sum in math, I can just figure out the step immediately.
I've done much better in my science and significantly improved.
My school exams grade improved a lot. Almost all my subjects were failed. And then last year, my subjects were passed about 70%.
I got 85 marks, now I have 95 marks. When you're born, if your brain is not strong, don't think that you cannot stretch it and do better.
If there's difficulty, you never give up and think about it.
All right, so you can see some of the kids' impact there, and this is what I was going to talk about. So I want to wrap up. Like I said, hopefully I have impressed upon you that some of these processes are really quite technical, right? That we're using computer to really help us measure the speed. Is it at 100 milliseconds or 80 milliseconds? So it's very precise, right? But I always like to be able to give you some things that we can do at home. So even if you don't have the luxury of brain training, right? Maybe you're in a territory, without a brain fit studio, or where these services are not readily available. So these are some of the things you can look at. If you have a young child, if you're thinking about helping them build attention span, always go for stretch play, right? That means you play for as long on one toy as possible. So what often happens nowadays, because of the affluence, children are going from toy to toy to toy. But during a play session, focus and stretch it out. For the older children, mindfulness training is my first go-to, right? In absence of equipment, in absence of resources, all right? So I'm discussing this where you have no guidance, you have no tools to help you. Mindfulness, right? So you are now quieting your mind, right? It's free, right? But you need the child to be guided. So do it as a family activity where you do maybe deep breathing exercises together, right? So this is proven, a very simple activity, but great to impact that attention and focus network that is so important. Perception, how do you improve that? You have to target, if it's auditory, you got to do listening games. Like that little girl, right? Mommy, crack the egg. See if they can learn that, or give them instructions. Can you put the sticker on the big boy, put the others, put the big sticker on the big boy and the small sticker on the boy with the blue shirt, for example, and slowly make it longer, right? So that's for auditory. And for vision, you just got to sharpen up, tune them into details. When you're looking at details, point out to the little ones, right? Whereas I think if you have an older child who needs visual spatial exercises or auditory exercise, I think if you find that there's already a weakness, I would feel that you will probably need some higher level, more structured exercises to get them going, right? I mean, you can certainly do things like mazes, puzzles, to help. But if you're older and you already see a gap, then I'm not sure if that would be sufficient to push it up, right? When the demand is, the school demand is already high. But certainly you can, try some of the visual spatial exercises. At BrainFit, we use the fast forward auditory exercise where the scientists have really engineered such that we're able to develop auditory speed to the tune of 15 milliseconds, right? Very, very short, where the brain has that brain speed, okay? For working memory, narrate the day. At the end of the day, talk with your baby. What did we do? Oh, we went to grandma's house, then the supermarket and whatever, right? Talk about it. And you're working on sequencing as well. These two work hand in hand, yeah? You can do memory games like, kind of two cards matching and all. And again, working memory for the older individual is also hard to impact. And you also need to see where you are. Are you targeting visual and auditory, and where you are? Because working memory integrates heavily with attention and also the two channels, right? But certainly you can use memory type of games to help them, right? Like even, the matching ones, or Simon says that, no, not Simon says, like some of those following instruction, kind of where the instructions get really long, if you're targeting auditory working memory, right? Where you give them quite a lengthy sentence, or listening to an audiobook and then having to answer some questions based on that. Okay, but if you're really wanting to target the network, again, it might be that you might need some structured exercises if you're an older child. For motor control, right, I highly recommend crawling, lots of sensory experiences, balance, and also don't negate your fine motor exercises. Fine motor is heavily linked to math. Just trust me on that, right? So the brain's scans show that there's a big correlation. So you want the fingers to be really strong. For the older kids, you want to have good core stability for attention span. Eye-hand coordination for speed, yeah, right? Because you're able to kind of process like catching, okay? And that also works on your spatial responses, all right? Speed exercises where you have to react to something that you see or something that you hear, right? And again, that drives your processing speed as well, yeah. Okay, sequencing will be, you can sequence patterns and stories. You saw the video of that. Cooking, where you have numerous steps, right? You can use activities like that. With the older child, you can work about continuing the story. Okay, what happened then? The first child, second, and then you just have to continue in a coherent way and also recap what is going on as they add to that story, okay? So you're working on building sequences. Again, very close to working memory as well. Coding, right? You're ordering, coding is a very precise language where you have to order, you turn left first, the robot, and then you turn right, and then you make a roundabout turn, and you have to give the directions directly. So that can impact sequencing. Or on the other hand, kids who are weak in sequencing might find this activity very difficult, right? So then you have to kind of tear it down for them. Processing speed, for a young child, I would highly recommend that you don't stress on speed, but develop solid skills in all your developmental milestones, your motor, language areas, and all that. Speed is built upon really already strong networks, right? So you lay down the foundations in the first 6 years. Processing speed then will just come, much more naturally. For older kids, some online games, right? The violent ones will not be good, but some online games have been researched to help processing speed, and also some time games. Okay, in summary, all right, I'm late again. I'm so sorry, right? Cognitive skills, but we don't really see questions. Yeah, cognitive skills are needed for intelligence, but also distinctly separate skills. Okay, so they're especially important for receiving and processing information. And we've got the whole list there, some which we talk about. And just to remember some of the strategies. If you're 0 to 6, go and have a wide exposure of all the different skills. And older, you want to know your child as much as you can, either through observation or through a standardized testing process. And then you want to target activities to them as much as you can. Remember, always make things harder. Don't just stick at one thing and then it's always that same puzzle, right? You then, the moment the child can master it, you got to, push the network, right? So that it consolidates more and more, all right? By using the 80-20 rule, for example. Okay, so in this series of Supercharging Your Child series, we have gone through the strategic networks in the last 2 sessions. And today we talk about the recognition networks, right? Which is how you even learn in the first place, okay? Now, the next one coming out will be the emotional part, right? Your motivation, the why of learning. So that's coming up in 2 weeks' time, where we will be talking about the soft skills. What about your motivation? What about the thoughts, the inner conversations that's going on? And this is the feedback form, right? So, and it links you to sign up for the next webinars as well. So please do give us feedback, or if you have any questions. And yeah, time's up. But Naresh, do we have any questions that we should take?
Hi, Cheryl. Yes, my turn for hosting, and we end up with one question. Okay. So is the program Well, by the way, thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Thank you so much. And congratulations on Isabel, by the way. Okay.
Hard work,
Okay.
hard work.
Okay. So is the program suitable for attention deficiency condition?
Yes. So again, children with a diagnosed learning difficulty, for example, ADD or ADHD or dyslexia, a lot of the times, we see that, okay, diagnostic criteria, okay, the brain, now maybe I just want to clarify very quickly. A lot of times people think that brains are different, like either you have three types of brain. You have a gifted brain, normal brain, or a learning disabled brain. So, but what we now know that the brain is not categorical like that. It's not a type of brain, right? We all have abilities. It's all in a spectrum. Giftedness is just one end of the spectrum, and a learning challenge is the other end of the spectrum, right? And the cutoff points, the diagnosis are man-made points. You have to know that, right? It's a psychological test, it's a statistical point, right? Whereas you can have abilities that's in the spectrum. And how will you drive the brain to change from a weak to a stronger area doesn't change, whether or not the child is falling in the diagnostic criteria or not, right? But obviously a child with greater weaknesses, you may need lower level of exercises to start with, right? It's the mental weights that's important, right? So all the maybe most of the primary grade 2 kids, taking the physical fitness example, maybe we start with a 500-gram weight, let's say for all our biceps, but you have an exceptionally weak child, maybe that child can only start with a 100-gram weight. So when you talk about brain training, it's not so much whether you can impact, right? But rather or not that have you got the scope of the exercises? Are you able to scaffold the exercises so that you're able to then push them up from that level? So the answer is yes, cognitive training, can be applied to children with challenges, including if you're asking specifically about our Brain Fits programs. Yes, and we do work with kids with different diagnoses at our centers as well.
Great, thank you. So you mentioned scope and scaffold, right? So I'm trying to put it in layman's term here. So my question, actually I have a question. Right? So to summarize what you said is basically three cognitive skills is input, processing, and applying. I'm just making it really simple, right? Okay. Now working memory sits between input and processing, let's say, right?
Yeah.
Roughly. Yeah. So now my question is, with the input, which is perception, right? The development of perception, that's the first part. Information comes in from there. Now, how does that affect attention and processing?
Oh, yeah, I think perception is they're all interlinked, right? That's the thing. You need attention to have great perception. Okay, but you can, by perceiving, you are also driving the attention networks. Right. So often what we see is that when you have a cog map, right? I mean, the profiles where you're seeing that the kids have a deficiency in all that. So that's why the training's got to be so specific. Are we tackling a visual working memory? And I just want to quickly mention, I was just looking through the chats, right? Sure. Alan Badley. Yes, I think he talks a lot about working memory, and someone has recommended that there is develop the comprehension or construct of, sorry, that's a theoretical, So I thought it was a suggestion. But if you do want to read about working memory, yes. So there is that visual sketchpad and the on phonological loop that's explained very, very nicely by a researcher, and so that might be something that you want to go on. But I hope I answered. Did I answer your question, Naresh?
Yeah. So basically, because perception is where the information comes in first, but you're mentioning that you need to have attention to perceive, right? Yeah. It's like a chicken and an egg. So basically, both have to be there, and that's why you have to cross train multiple skills, right?
Yes, absolutely. And attention is the lurking one where you can seem like it's everywhere. That's why we often say that, if you're lacking in eye tracking, you can also be showing, displays, that you have signs of inattention, right? So it's so important in different areas. So sometimes what is helpful is an assessment like ours to tease out what really is the issue, right? Because at BrainFit, out of 10 parents that come to us, 8 blames attention. But it is not true that 8 of them have weak attention.
90% blame attention in Thailand.
Yeah,
Actually,
in Thailand, 90%, right?
So we have to explain, no, it's other things as well, yeah.
In 80% of the cases, they all blame attention, right? But actually, if you are not, you may have perfect attention, but if you're eye tracking, I'm just going to use a simple example, right? You're not able to track your eyes, you lose information, you appear as if you're not paying attention, right? So without a test like that, then it becomes hard to prescribe an activity. Yeah.
Yes,
so
yes,
hopefully, that answer your questions.
Thank you. Thank you. There are a lot of perceptual games available. Okay.
Yeah, we help children to notice differences. Yeah, they are done in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, and then they disappeared from school preparatory. Absolutely. Preschool years do a lot of perceptual activities. Jerry, I totally agree. I think it's become very academic. It's about, a lot about the math and the counting, but not knowing that all the counting, you need your sequencing. All your reading, you need your sequencing, not just the phonics. But certainly we see in Singapore, it's become very, very, very academic. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, we need to end.
Wait, no, there's more questions. Cheryl, there's more questions. But a couple minutes. So can we share outlet in Malaysia? Somebody wants to know a location in Malaysia.
Yeah, maybe just put down on the feedback form for us.
Yeah, if any questions now, because we've gone over time. So if you could fill in the form with the questions, right? I'll copy and I'll send you. Yeah, there's a link in the chat. Somebody will get back to you. Yeah, then I think that's a better way to get your questions. Yeah. So Cheryl, you want to answer any more questions or anything else to add?
Yeah, no, I probably I want to let everybody go. We sometimes get feedback that people are annoyed
It's
that
too
we go.
long.
Yeah, but it's just sorry, I went over time with the content, right? It's just it's a big topic, right?
It's complicated. It's complex, and you need to you need time to explain it. Yeah, to digest it. Yeah. Okay, so
thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to end the webinar now. So please give us feedback. We read every single feedback that you give, so it's very valuable. Or if you want to make appointments with any of your local BrainFit, fill in the form, and there's appointment timetable as well. Yeah. So thank you very much, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks.
Yes, and come back. We're going to talk about another set of very important skills, your mindset, all the inner talk that is driving our children towards tasks or away from tasks, So it's so important, as are all these hardwired skills as well. So thank you, everybody. Goodbye and stay safe, yeah?
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, panelists as well, yeah? Thank you, Naresh and everybody. Thank you. So we will just leave it on a little bit more. And thank you, Juliet. Hi. Charlene, thank you. Betty, thank you. Caroline, thank you. You're most welcome. So we love to talk about the brain. Come back again. Hope to see you all again, right? And thank you very much. Okay, so I should close this, Naresh?
Sure.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.